You're listening to the Dealmakers Edge with A.Y. Strauss, diving deep into stories behind commercial real estate leaders. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dealmakers Edge. Today, I am going to be speaking with Glen Kunofsky, who's the founder and CEO of Surmount, which was actually just recently rebranded. He was previously known in his companies as Net Pro, STNL Advisors, and UGDC, which was the development arm. And we'll learn more about that rebrand during the podcast. Glen has been a driving force in the net lease and sale-leaseback space for over 2 decades, and him and his team have combined to close more than $40 billion in transactions across 12,000 plus properties nationwide. Glen's worked with private equity clients, publicly traded REITs, high net worth individuals, family offices, and he's navigated deals across retail, office, and industrial properties. He's really built a reputation as a trusted advisor and a foremost leader in commercial real estate. So in this episode, we're going to talk about the evolution of his company, how he got started, the rebrand or sort of refresh of these different companies that he blends in together into one unified brand today, where he sees the state of the market, and how he balances it all. So without further ado, here's the episode. I hope you guys enjoy it. So here we are with Glen Kunofsky, the one and only, who's really set the bar so high in commercial real estate, specifically in retail. And we're going to get to know you in this conversation. We're going to learn about the evolution of your business and different companies, even in real time, where you've had a global rebrand, which is really exciting. But to start us off, I mean, you've done more than $40 billion in deals, over 12,000 properties nationwide. You contributed to the brokerage. You built a fabulous team. And maybe we could talk about where it all started. Now, you grew up in New York, you went to University of Arizona, but maybe you could talk about the early days of how you sort of just broke into the business.
Sure. I was born a few blocks away from here in Lenox Hill Hospital in Manhattan. My parents, one grew up in Brooklyn and Queens, other in Queens. Spent my first year in Queens and Forest Hills, and then my parents moved to Rockland County. Both were teachers, principals of schools here in New York City public school system. My dad was a principal of a middle school in the Bronx, where he worked basically his whole career, from a teacher to a guidance counselor to assistant principal, then principal. And my mom was an assistant principal here in Manhattan. They both commuted in from Rockland from when I was 1 till after I was in college. So we moved up to New City when I was 1 and basically spent my childhood there. I wasn't a great student. Went to high school at Clarkstown North High School, and then my senior year in high school, it was put to me in a few different ways to encourage me to go to community college for my senior year in high school for this accelerated program, which was more like, we really don't want you here causing trouble, and we've moved you out. So did my senior year in community college, and was able to work during that time, set up all my classes like 3 days a week, and was able to work and save up money. And then it sort of took me out on a path. A person, though, a good friend of mine now that was in the same program as me a year ahead, moved out to Arizona, and I went out to visit him spring break, and that was the only college I applied to. Went out to ASU, and it was sunny and beautiful, and I wasn't going to Harvard or anywhere in the Ivy League or anywhere. So just decided to move out there. Started my living out there was in a student housing complex, which is a funny story. I ended up like 20 years later, the person who owned that student housing complex where I lived, which was kind of a ripoff, I became a client of mine 20 years later. But basically how I got in, how I then moved into real estate was in my freshman year at college. We were living in a student housing complex where it was basically 3 times as much as getting an apartment or living in a house, but it was right on campus, and everyone coming from out of state went there. And they kindly said to me, like, hey, you guys are bothering all our other tenants, having parties and whatever. We'll let you out of your lease. Went out with a realtor, and this was the end of the savings and loan crisis. And they said you could buy a house with basically $1,000 down and assume a mortgage. I think the first mortgage was at 18.5%. And I recruited some of the other tenants in there to move into my house and live for free. And that's how I got into real estate.
That's great. I think Nate Bargatze has a great line about community college. He said, For you guys, you probably want to stay in the community, get a lay of the land, if you will, stay local. But all kidding aside, I mean, obviously some people excel in academia and some people excel in the business world, and you've certainly managed to put together an absolute stellar career. Then let's talk about from there kind of into the brokerage world. How did that start? I know you were at Marcus Millichap a really long time. Was that your first job? Were you somewhere else before?
During college, I came about 27 properties that were mostly single family. Then after college, I spent almost 10 years. So I spent basically 18 to 30 in Arizona. I had a small construction company and a small property management company. I got it up to about 270 units, with the biggest property being about 15 units, all in Tempe. I met my wife in college. She was one of the people that I recruited to come over from the apartment complex to live in my house. So we've been together since we were 19, and then basically built up the real estate holdings. Really had no formal training in terms of investing in real estate, but just had this formula that, like, what I would put down, and then I wanted to make 10% on my money, did all the work to the properties myself. And then sort of fast forward of about 10 years of doing that, my wife was building her career at KPMG. She was much more professional. And we always said, she was from Connecticut. I grew up in Rockland, like I said. We always said we were coming home, visiting our families all the time. When we got married, we wanted to move back to the East Coast. So after 10 years, she came home one day and she said, I accepted a position at KPMG in New York. Are you coming or you're not coming? I decided to come. We got married, and then I spent a year going back and forth between Arizona and New York, basically selling the properties and selling off my construction company. Did a bunch of 1031 exchanges, which was my first exposure. Bought my first investment property in New York. It was a townhouse up on the Upper West Side on 95th Street. And while I was going back and forth, I met a gentleman who had just recently left Marcus and Millichap in management. It was in-person classes to get your real estate license back then, and spent a week with him. And I had known of Marcus and Millichap at the time because they had sold some of my smaller apartment complexes and whatnot, and spoke actually to a couple different firms under his recommendation, and joined Marcus and Millichap. And they told me, because they thought they had a hole to fill of doing limited service hotels. That was my first specialty when I joined them, and that's how I got into brokerage at that point.
Amazing. And you built a team. You really built the preeminent team there, focusing on triple net, the net, the net and net pro, and then the evolution of other kind of add-on ancillary complementary services, but spun out not too long ago. And I know culture is a driving factor for you, and people listening to this may be young and up and coming. Maybe they're acquiring real estate. Maybe they're brokers, aspiring to dominate, kind of in the vein that you have. Maybe you could talk about how you've built a team over the years with principles that can last and really scale alongside your growth.
Everything that I've ever done has been sort of relationship driven. Making the change in my career one of the biggest challenges was when I started in brokerage and knowing nothing about brokerage and property types and going into hotels. I spent 18 months trying to close my first hotel deal, which was very challenging. Driving up and down the East Coast, meeting with hotel owners, fighting over numbers and everything else. So one of the big challenges was making the switch from that into net lease. And, I made the switch, had to start over again, hired my first person, and I said, listen, I want this to be a long-term partnership. Let's come up with something where it's not 12 to 18 months, and sort of started the team that way. And then quickly, grew into taking in new people. I think sort of one of the things that my parents rubbed off on me was like teaching and mentoring is really something that I like, take seriously, and put everything that I learned into giving it to other people. So we quickly built out a team. I think within 5 years of getting into the net lease business, We had about 8 or 10 people. All of them are still with us today, which I'm really proud of. And the culture is all about mentoring, having people's back, and learning from one another. And we talk about at Surmount, our new company, relationships over transactions, and I've always taken that seriously. And that goes from basically the relationships with the people that you're working with, the relationship with the client, the relationship with vendors, and that's what's propelled this forward, is really just expanding on the relationships, taking the people that we've hired or have joined and building on that. And that's really sort of the backbone of everything that I've ever done, is just trying to expand the relationships with those people and grow together. And that goes for the employees, our brokers, our clients, our vendors. Everything is about relationships.
Well said. Our slogan at our firm is relationships first too, because that we're literally in that business. And if you can find a way to take excellent care of your team, invariably they will take excellent care of your clients, and then it will be a virtuous cycle. But retaining people, investing in people, trying to be the most optimal partner you can for people, that's not easy. And I think especially in commercial real estate, I'm sure you've seen it way more than I have on the transactions. There are so many short-term minded people, which over time, they will sort of reveal themselves and people will be less excited to do a transaction. So if you've built it the right way by keeping that brand personally, professionally, and building the team, that over time, you've got this trust factor you've accumulated now over many, many years. So I think you're seeing a return every day.
It was just common sense. I remember when I made that change and was looking at different brokerage companies, and I found that everywhere that I went to, and I think brokerage has evolved a little bit, but not really. When I was going to all these big companies and these big firms, everyone referred to deals. Everyone's like, deals. Like, hey, walk into our top guy's office. He did 30 deals this year, and this guy did 50 deals. I remember the first time when I started cold calling, they're not deals to the clients. These are investment properties. They're putting, a lot of equity into these things. They're risking capital. It's one of the things that we never talk about. There's transactions, never a deal. Like, this is someone's investment property. This is their lifeblood. It stood with me for a very long time. And as we built the culture, trying not to measure by the traditional brokerage metrics, and you had all these brokerage companies. When I walked into the big companies, it was always how much money this guy made, how many deals that he did. It was sort of like the Wolf of Wall Street everywhere I went. And how can I help someone? How can I grow a relationship with them? And how many transactions and what kind of relationship I can build with that same client instead of having to reinvent the deal every single time.
Yeah, and I think that's so important for people to hear, because everyone has a lot of war stories and a lot of ways really to get screwed over in this business, especially on the brokerage side. I mean, so really a lot of respect for taking the long road when other people will just take that short-term return. I think it's obviously led to a great culture and you've developed your team. Maybe we'll fast forward a little bit, because I know there's a million deals between those early days and today. We'll never get to even covering a tiny fraction, but I think the culture is a key thing to hit. Fast forward till today, you've got STNL Advisors, you have UGDC, which is your development arm. And just recently, I think it's been the last, 30 days or so. And by the time we release this episode, it might be in the past couple months, but Surmount, the new brand, new evolution of all the things you've been doing over all of these years, coming together holistically. Maybe you can describe how you got to this point, blending these entities together.
It's been a long journey. When we started, all of it was based on relationship and client needs. When we were doing brokerage, the big focus of our company is corporate real estate and helping companies, tenants, and private equity deal with their real estate. So basically the evolution was, I could sort of walk you through almost every one of them in a sort of a quick story. We started in brokerage in the early 2000s, serving these clients. We got into the sale-leaseback business very early, helping companies, sell their real estate as a financing mechanism to move them forward. We're very productive. And then 2008 happened. A lot of those same clients ran into financial problems and they said, Glenn, we're having trouble. We can't pay the rent. We have to close locations. So that's where we started STNL, which was our advisory entity. At the time, we were still at Marcus Millichap. They only did brokerage, but these clients said, hey, we need help renegotiating our leases, getting rent relief. And I hired someone from one of the REITs that was our client that had some experience in doing that. And the clients just turned it over to us. And we quickly grew that business to expand and help those relationships with those same clients, to help them fast forward, call it whatever it is now, 14, 15 years from there. That business had grown to representing some of the largest companies in private equity in terms of dealing with non-owned real estate and renegotiating their leases. And we have about 15 people working in our institutional coverage group at Surmount now that was STNL. So then sort of right at that same moment of then helping them with the leases coming out of the Great Recession, a lot of them said to us, hey, we need some help with development. And we need capital, we need expertise. Glen, can you and your team help us on that end? So we went out and looked for sort of the best of people in construction and development and started helping the clients, give or take around 2011 or 12, in terms of bringing in construction expertise to serve those same private equity and corporate clients, as well as other developers that were our clients at the time. Some of our developer clients said, hey, we're moving with this tenant into a new market. Can you help us? And basically, the attitude was always with any of our clients, we may not have done it, but we will help and we will do the research and find the best people. So UGDC was our development arm, and we sort of helped those same clients with all their development needs. And that business has quickly grown. I think we've completed about 300 construction projects over that time period. Right now, we have, I think, about another 80 or 100 in various stages of development. And that's in partnership with the tenants. That's in partnership with developers and providing those services there. And then most recently, we added capital markets. For a long time, we subbed out the financing and the capital markets to others that we felt that were good in the industry. And we looked far and wide to find the best solution for our clients. We were really fortunate to have Chris Marks and his team that I worked with at Marcus Millichap for 15 years, building a relationship, join us as our capital markets group. And then so we had all these separate entities providing services to similar clients. The rebrand was to basically put everything under one name where we could serve the clients and people would know what we're doing, how we do it, and all the different ways we can help them. So today, under one roof at Surmount, we have brokerage, advisory, capital markets, and construction. So the rebrand has been really successful. We've had clients reaching out saying, oh, we didn't know you did this. We didn't know you could help us with this. And so we're really happy to be launching a brand that provides everything under one roof and under one name.
It's pretty cool. Also, if you listen to your story, you kind of set the roots for that way back when in college. You were buying, selling, flipping, construction. You really came back to your roots in a really roundabout way, obviously on a much more macro institutional style of a firm. So congrats on that. It's really exciting. And for example, I didn't even know that, I knew you'd mentioned you were involved in development, but I didn't understand the context. Now the story is clearer. So I think that was a prime example of what an awesome brand refresh could do to continue to add the value to the story. Maybe we could talk a little bit on a macro level for a minute. You're really kind of the bleeding edge of the industry. Obviously, you're focused on retail and whatnot. But maybe you could talk about the sentiment of the market on a macro basis. I know you're involved more a little bit politically. I know we talked about that, but just real feel time. You're setting the tone. You're a market maker, essentially. Real feel today versus, say, even 3, 6, 9, 12 months ago. Transaction volume up? Is it the same? Are you more optimistic? Where do you kind of see us in this cycle for what specifically you're focused on?
I'm always excited about real estate. People tend to be emotional relative to real estate. The market's up, the financing is so bad, rates are so bad. But from where I came from, like I said, buying my first property and assuming a mortgage is 16 or 17%, seeing rates go to near zero. And then over the last 10 years, prior to the last couple, very low rates, and everyone got used to that. I think the market, from a standpoint for us on a numbers basis, which everyone likes to look at numbers, we are up significantly over last year, and we're building better relationships. We're doing more transactions, but the market overall, especially net lease, these are long-term investments. It's not buying and selling quickly. Our average hold of our clients is 10 years plus. So from a standpoint, the market's picking up steam. Some of the headwinds in terms of lenders not wanting to cut back their book on commercial real estate loans is loosening up. People are starting to adjust their expectations, both buyers and sellers, on cap rate, but volume is up overall. For us, one of the most exciting things is people are joining us organically because they want to be part of something special. And sort of that headwind in the market for a lot of brokers that are at places that don't give them the support, don't have the culture of support, of the culture of mentoring, and they're competing with the guys next to them. Like, what's exciting for us, people are calling saying, we want to join. One of the things that is the thing that we do here is trying to have a really non-competitive platform. So every time someone joins us, we look, or every time someone potentially wants to join, we talk to everyone in the overlap. What do you think of this person? Have you transacted with them before? So the beauty of a little bit slower, challenging market is people, both clients and new brokers, wanting to join our platform. So that's really exciting. Our growth trajectory has been really good, and the market is good right now. Like what we're telling clients, like, now is a good time to invest. Yes, the rate might be higher. Yes, your return might be lower, but the ability with real estate to pick up things that have a long-term value, when the market will come back, rates will eventually come down. So the good property that you buy today, maybe you're not making the return that you were going to make 3 years ago with 3% debt. You're buying it and you're getting 7% debt, but you're buying a property that much better. You're probably getting a little bit higher cap rate. And when the market gets better, you'll refinance it and you'll have something to give to your children that has a lot of value, good real estate intrinsic. So I'm excited about the market. On a numbers basis, we're significantly up over last year, but the volume of listings, the volume of buyers, and the volume of the relationships that we're building is way, way up.
And of course, it's cumulative over many, many years of building to this point. Next question I have is, really, we call this podcast the Dealmakers Edge, right? So anybody can make a deal happen. Of course, it takes a lot of skill and maybe a little luck, and you're clearly an extremely hardworking person. But the edge is really the mental aspect. So clearly, you have to manage your own thought process day to day, and have managed it successfully over decades at this point to build to where you are. Maybe you can just touch on mindset. You're sitting down with a young agent, a young investor, somebody who's really trying to make a career in this business, and you've been through a lot of ups, downs, and everything in between. Maybe we could talk about how you speak to yourself mentally day to day, and how you goal set, and how you manage through the down days. You lost out on that deal earlier part of your career, but that macro level of getting the mindset right. I mean, you've got a lot happening every day. Even for you to decide what you're doing that day is not easy. So kind of on a micro macro level, how do you manage the mindset towards growth, and also just the mental health aspect of getting through and evolving in this business?
I try never to take myself that seriously. That's first. Real estate is great. It's important. We're dealing with huge numbers and people's portfolios, but I look at some other professions. I talk to my cousin a lot. She's doing her surgical residency. So when I come into work, someone's not going to live or die by my actions. So starting with the mentality that everything sounds life or death. There's going to be people coming in, screaming, yelling about, clients want to know why their property is not selling. And so not taking things too seriously is my first, not taking myself too seriously, but, my mentality has always been, how do I outwork the competition? Everybody wants to complicate things and make things seem more complicated than they are, outworking, sort of out researching, and really just making the connections and being genuine with people is sort of the mindset, and taking down the temperature. Like when I talk to new agents and they're frustrated about, their listing's not selling, or they didn't get a new listing, or they lost the listing, it always boils back down to what they're doing to improve the relationship and thinking about what happened. So my mentality is always, coming out of something is just, how do I build that relationship, and getting on every phone call, every meeting, whether that's internal or external, always comes back to what are we building together with someone. Talk about that deal edge or whatever it may be. Really, you can't move people with your knowledge. That people come to you, and that whether it's a client, a company, a CFO, I always try and put myself in their shoes and see what they're trying to accomplish and how we can help them. So I always sort of break down, it's not the situation in hand that they're talking about, even though we're talking about a specific property, a specific loan, a specific tenant situation. I always try and think about what the overall relationship is, because the answer sometimes maybe we can help. We can't sell the property for what you paid for it, for what you want to get for it. So overall, looking at that situation and saying, like, listen, we're going to tell you the truth. We're going to tell you right now isn't the time to sell. We can't get you the number. But I really always try and break things down of like, what's going to happen in the long run, how that relationship is going to grow. And that usually, grounds me in the conversations, both with our employees, with our brokers, with external brokers. That's sort of my grounding point. And then thinking about how to take the situation that's at hand and how we can help. And a lot of times it's finding them the right solution, the right lawyer, the right consultant, the right, and going above and beyond to say, like, this is what needs to happen. We made 20 phone calls for you, and we found this person that can help you. And over the years of doing that for clients, now we have such a network across the country of local, both internal and external brokers that help us, people involved in land, people involved in appraisal, people involved in construction management, and building those relationships over time has really, like, when an agent comes in with a problem, it's not a handbook. It's, oh, here's the person that helped us with that situation before. And then it's not always me. Our culture is very much in office, very much mentoring. And so we encourage people in our meetings. Most of our stuff is in person. The people that are working in other states and our other offices are Zooming in together. And we take time in our meetings to really think about situations, and someone brings up a situation. We don't like to say, raise our hand in the meeting and say, who this guy closed this and this guy closed that. We say, what's going on with our clients today and how can we help them? And when there's something I don't know about, I turn to our team, because there's such a knowledge base here that we just draw on that knowledge base, and we deal with situations together. And sort of, I feel like I always say this repeatedly, it's the relationships that move things forward. So when I don't know something, when I'm frustrated, I lean on the other people to really help me. And that's how I stay grounded, that I'm not always going to know the answer.
Well said, Glenn. For somebody who doesn't know the answer all the time, you've managed to build that culture that you can find the answer. And I think that alone.
Hopefully I get better
Yeah.
at having the answer, but when I don't have the answer, I look to other people. But like, if you're not learning, I listen to other pitches. Like when we own property, sometimes we'll get involved with a client that has a situation where either an investor with a developer, or we're working through a situation, and I'll listen to some of these people that come in and that say they have all the answers, and they don't. So I always tell people, Like there's no reason to BS someone. If you don't know, say you don't know, but say, I'll go find out for you and I'm going to do the research and I'm going to find out for you.
100%. Such a critical, obvious life skill that not everyone has. Anything else I could have asked you that I should have asked you that you would have loved to talk about here? Obviously, we covered a lot of topics. I want to be sensitive to your time, but I'm really thankful you're sharing some of these insights with the listeners. I know you've gotten involved a little politically. You've got other things happening. Do you want to touch on any of that?
So yeah, we recently got involved. There's the new tax bill. I think the president keeps referring to as big, beautiful bill or whatever, but there are some key provisions in there that were in the Jobs Act that was passed in 2017 about accelerated and bonus depreciation on certain types of assets. We actually got very involved right from the very beginning in 2018 in making a market for properties that qualified for bonus depreciation that really helped our clients that have real estate income and being able to buy properties that qualified for bonus depreciation. It really accelerated the market. It helped our clients. And I've never been a political person. I've never, cared to be involved in politics, but it really propelled our clients' wealth. It really propelled development in a lot of the smaller markets. And we saw an impact from that legislation that led to further development, further job creation, more income for our clients relative to real estate. So we got involved. We found a lobbyist that specialized in tax issues, and they actually had worked for Mitch McConnell's office when they passed the Jobs Act. So we went down. I spent last week, I think it was last Wednesday, meeting with a lot of the key people that are involved in trying to get this tax legislation passed. It was very interesting, to sit. Some of these people, like we met with people at the White House. We met with a White House tax advisor. We met with a lot of the key senators involving the tax legislation, and really just made the case of why these provisions would help the real estate industry as a whole, help our clients, help create jobs. So it was really interesting to see the other side of it, of like how the politicians view some of these business things. And it was interesting to get involved and really like explain to these people of what impacts they can have on an industry. And I learned a lot. I really like, and you could see some of them are very knowledgeable about the actual impact. Some of them are all about what is it going to do for me in terms of raising money and votes. But it's been an interesting evolution, and we're hopeful that our efforts that we're putting forth are going to benefit our clients. And it goes back to, that's really the main objective here. We saw a huge benefit to our clients. We saw a huge benefit in terms of pro real estate legislation can move things. And so it was fun to get involved, fun to really see how the system works. And we're going to continue to push things that really help our clients in our industry.
That's awesome, Glenn. I think everything you've done to date has been impactful. I think I'll turn around in a few years and continue to be shocked with what else you've done, but hopefully in a good systematic way. You've always led the curve. You've had a big vision. You've executed on vision. So I'm sure your team and your clients will continue to be well served by that vision. And again, I'm really thankful you took the time today. I learned a lot. I'm sure our listeners will learn a lot. And I just want to continue to watch your amazing success story, which is still evolving all the time in a positive upswing. So Glenn, thank you for being here. And I'm going to continue to watch your journey, as all of our listeners will continue to do so too.
I really appreciate the opportunity and you taking the time to talk to me today.
Of course. Thank you for joining the Dealmakers Edge. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. And please give us a 5-star rating so more people can follow the conversation.